Attack the Clones. Yeah, this is probably my second least favorite Star Wars movie. Rise of Skywalker is like right below that one. Just because there's like not really anything to enjoy with this movie. I think the clone battle at the end is really awesome. Like I'll get to that in a second. But other than that, like there's not really much going on. Right from the get-go, we kind of pan down onto the planet of Coruscant, and right when you think like everything's all good, Captain Typho is like I guess what's wrong? Because there wasn't any danger, the huge explosion, and you think like Amidala died in it, but then you realize that's just a decoy, which George Lucas was inspired by Hidden Fortress, because in that one, you have the princess character and then you have her decoy who's killed. So he very much inspired to put that into Attack the Clones. And, it's going to be kind of this whole kind of assassination plot where like one person's working for another person, where you're like, the character of Zam Wesell, who's working for Jango Fett, the bounty hunter who, is responsible for the clones, who's actually working for Count Dooku, who's a fallen Jedi, who was Qui-Gon Jinn's previous master, who gets introduced later, who's actually working for Sidious, who's introduced in the last one, and kind of go up the chain of like these different people who are kind of after Queen Amidala, because they have this whole brewing civil war between the Republic and the Separatists, and the main plot for this one is Padme Amidala, who's now a senator, who's not a queen anymore after serving her term. She's just trying to keep the galaxy together while all these different planets are kind of like separating from the New Republic. So the whole kind of like plot is to protect Padme, Yoda, and the rest of the Jedi Council, ask Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker to be her protectors. And now it's like 10 years later, Obi-Wan Kenobi is now a Jedi Master, and Anakin Skywalker is now his Padawan. And there's obviously some tension there because Anakin didn't grow up in the Jedi Council, and he was like 9 years old when they took him, and he's obviously very emotional, because he's attached to his mother, which we'll get to later on. And another assassination plot is put on her, and right when they have that whole kind of like space chase to try to find who the assassin is, they find out that it's Zam Wesell. They capture her. Obi-Wan cuts her arm off when they find her in the bar, which is a callback to A New Hope, where cuts off the guy's arm in the bar, which is a callback to Yojimbo, Akira Kurosawa, where Yojimbo cuts off one of the assassin's arms, and that it's kind of like a full circle with that. So they're trying to interrogate her, trying to figure out like what's going on, but then right when she's about to say something, like a dart gets shot into her neck, and we kind of have these two separate storylines of Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of trying to find out where the dart came from, finds out it was from Kamino, and then finds out about Jango Fett, finds out about the clones, and then finds out that Sifo Dyas actually commissioned the Kaminoans to make a clone army. So he has this whole kind of like 1950s kind of Dick Tracy mystery, going to the 50s diner with Dexter Jester and all that. And then on the flip side, Anakin gets assigned to protect Padme, go back to the planet of Naboo and watch over her. And when they could have assigned like any other Jedi to protect her, especially since Obi-Wan senses that he has feelings for Padme, because Anakin has that confession of like he's been dreaming of her like every single night and all this stuff, not creepy at all. So then they have their whole romance on Naboo. They obviously fall in love after 3 days and all that. The whole sand lines, like I don't like sand, it's coarse, rough, irritating. It gets everywhere. So the storylines kind of diverge back. Anakin has that vision of his mother in pain and everything, so he kind of goes to the planet of Tatooine, tries to find her. Another callback to the Searchers. In that movie, the characters go into the Native American camp and then finds his sister and everything. So George Lucas kind of mirrors that in this one. He finds his mother dies in his arms. He comes enraged, slaughters all of the Tuskens. They're like animals, but I slaughter them like animals. He has that scene later on with Padme, and then Padme's still in love with him, I guess, after being a rageful guy and a murderer. But anyway, on the flip side, Obi-Wan kind of goes after Jango to kind of like question him about like, what are you trying to do with all these clones? Like, what's going on? He flies off to Geonosis, has a whole kind of asteroid battle, which is a callback to Empire Strikes Back. Has that kind of like the bombs that Jango fires off, the one that kind of like suck in all the sound that has the brrr, that whole iconic sound. Jango kind of like has like the thermal missiles on Obi-Wan. He fires off the spare parts canister, blows that up. He hides behind the asteroid, which is supposed to set up the events in Empire Strikes Back, where Han and Leia are like on the Millennium Falcon, with the trash kind of go off, and then the Slave One, or I guess Fire Spray now, which is powered by Boba Fett, Jango Fett's son, sees that and then kind of flies off with him. So it's supposed to set that up. So he goes on the planet of Geonosis, finds out about Count Dooku, how he's working with Sidious, and now there's kind of like just some shady stuff going on, how there's like a war that might be going on. Obi-Wan gets captured. Before that, he sends a message off to the Jedi Council. So the Jedi Council goes to Geonosis to go rescue him. Anakin wants to like stay behind. Padme is like obviously inspired to go after Obi-Wan. So then she and Anakin fly off to Geonosis. They have that whole droid factory sequence, which is kind of pointless, but as I know, there's deleted scenes of them actually in a room with Count Dooku talking about like what's going on with the Senate and the Separatists and the potential civil war, but I guess George Lucas thought that was too boring, so he decided to have like a whole action sequence in the droid factory, which just leads to just them being captured anyway. So Anakin and Padme get captured, are sent to the arena, and they're about to be killed by like the 3 different beasts, but then right at the last second the Jedi come in, they rescue them, they have the whole kind of arena battle, which is inspired by gladiator movies. The clones come in and like rescue them, led by Yoda, and they have the whole like Clone War battle and everything. They see Count Dooku flying his ship into like a little facility or something, and then Anakin and Obi-Wan have to go after him. They have the whole lightsaber duel, which is kind of underwhelming. Dooku takes out Obi-Wan, he takes out Anakin, cuts his arm off, which is foreshadowing Empire Strikes Back, where Luke gets his hand chopped off by Darth Vader. And then Yoda comes in, him and Dooku have their force battle because they were former master and apprentice. Dooku shoots lightning, Yoda's able to deflect it, and then, he pulls out his lightsaber, and they have their whole lightsaber battle, which at first I didn't care for, but I mean, it's kind of cool, but I think it would have been cooler if Yoda just kind of kept using the force and didn't have to use a lightsaber and, hop around and everything. I think his battle in Revenge of the Sith between him and the Emperor is pretty cool because that's all set up beforehand, and they kind of have to use their lightsabers together. But with this one, I guess George Lucas was trying to set up the fact that Yoda can use a lightsaber, but it did look kind of weird just him flipping around and stuff. So I guess I kind of go back and forth. I know some people love it, some people hate it, but I think it would have been better if he just kind of kept using the force, and then Dooku uses the force, crush that pipe that's about to fall on Anakin and Obi-Wan. Yoda uses the force to kind of like stop it and then move it aside while Dooku gets away, meets up with Sidious, and then it talks about how the war has begun, and then Sidious is like, "Excellent, everything is going as I have foreseen." Classic Emperor line. And then the Jedi are reunited. Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, and Yoda talk about how everything's good now that we have the clones, but then Yoda is like, "Victory, you say? Master Obi-Wan, not victory. The shroud of the dark side is fallen. Begun, the Clone War has." And we have that whole pan of the clones about to go off into battle. And that sets up the whole Clone Wars, which you only get to see a little glimpse of in Revenge of the Sith, and then we get the Clone Wars series after that. And then, we cut to Anakin and Padme, confessing their love for each other, getting married, and, now I have to have this whole secret relationship because Jedi aren't supposed to fall in love. So now it's just like, oh no, what's going to happen? And then, Iris out, and credits and all that. So yeah, I think like overall, Attack of the Clones is another one that feels very much self-contained. I mean, again, kind of like Phantom Menace, there's a lot of like essential elements in it where, sets up the Clone Wars and, sets up Sidious's rise in power, like within the Senate as Palpatine and then outside as the future Emperor. But yeah, it's just like, again, like Phantom Menace, like the dialogue's not great, the acting's not really all that great, and I kind of feel for the actors because really like a lot of this stuff is like shot on green screen and blue screen, and there's a lot more locations in Phantom Menace, but this one is kind of like more 50-50 where it's like half locations, half blue screen. So I'm sure like one, you don't really get that great of a script to work on because George Lucas like only wrote this like a couple weeks before production even started. I know he had a second screenwriter to kind of polish things up, but he kind of really wrote this all in one draft and then just started filming it, so you can see like it's not really as refined as it could be. So yeah, that's kind of a bummer. And then his direction, I guess it improves a little bit more over Phantom Menace, like as far as like the action sequences and stuff, but overall it's not really that much better than Phantom Menace. Proof is in the pudding. It became like kind of like the least successful Star Wars prequel at that time. It got outclassed by like Spider-Man and Lord of the Rings and The Matrix and like all this other trilogy movies coming out at the same time, and Harry Potter as well. So yeah, I can definitely see like why people weren't really responding to it. It didn't really improve too much on Phantom Menace. Like I said, it ranks down below Phantom Menace for me, and yeah, there's just not really much to grasp on that's like really cool. I mean, I think Jango's cool, even though he gets killed off by Mace Windu and all that. The clone battle is pretty cool, but yeah, other than that, it's just like kind of like another skippable one. Like I said, there's some essential elements in it, but we really can just kind of jump to Revenge of the Sith and kind of know what's going on. So yeah, it's kind of like my overall thoughts on it. Definitely not my favorite Star Wars movie, but hey, what can you do?